Welcome to Fear and Fiction, where the stories are strange and the fear is real. What's going on, Fear and Fiction? Excuse the background, just currently in a move, but I want to keep bringing these wonderful stories to you. You love the hood horror stories, so I got a couple for you. Let's get into it.
I'm from New Orleans, so I know better than to act like every block means the same thing after midnight. That's how people get humbled here. Not because the whole city is dangerous every second. It's because there are places where history sits under the pavement like heat, and if you move through them carelessly, you feel it. Even if nothing happens, you feel it. A couple summers ago, I was leaving my cousin's place in Central City way later than I meant to. She'd had me helping move boxes and put together one of those cheap dressers that look simple until you're 3 hours in and cussing at a bag of screws. By the time I headed out, it was after midnight. My phone was under 15%, and I was in that stupid mood where you think shaving 10 minutes off the trip is worth taking a route you normally wouldn't. That's how I ended up cutting near Harmony Oaks. Everybody from here knows what that land used to be. The buildings there now are newer than the stories. That's the best way I can put it. You can put up gates, repaint walls, add parking, rename a place, make it brighter than it used to be. That doesn't mean whatever sat there before is gone. It just means it got covered. I was walking along the outside edge at first, near where the lights were better, telling myself I wasn't even really cutting through, more like skimming past it. I could see the low buildings, the clean lines, the townhome rows, the little bits of landscaping trying hard to make the place feel normal. And during the day, maybe it did. At night, it felt like somebody had built fresh housing over an old wound and hoped nobody would notice. I texted my girl that I was on my way home. She hit me back asking why I was still out. I started typing, then stopped, because that was when I noticed I was the only one moving. There were people out. A lady standing on a second floor landing with her arms folded. An old man near one of the gate sections. Somebody smoking by a parked car, but none of them were doing what people normally do at that hour. Nobody looked relaxed. Nobody looked halfway distracted. It felt like they were all waiting for something to pass through. Then I saw the woman in red. She was standing inside the property line, near one of the walkways between buildings, where the light hit her just enough to show the color and not much else. It wasn't bright red. It was darker than that, the kind of red that looks rich from far away and wrong up close. At first I didn't stop because I figured she lived there. Maybe she was waiting on somebody. Maybe she just stepped out for air. But after about 10 steps, I looked back and realized she had changed position. Not like I saw her walk, just closer. She was now nearer to the iron fence, one hand resting against it, her head turned in my direction. A man by the gate lifted his chin at me and said, real low, "Keep going." I did. That should have been the end of it. Mind your business, keep moving, get home. But then I heard my aunt's voice behind me. Not my cousin, my aunt. My aunt's been dead 6 years. Still, I knew that voice immediately. Same little edge in it, like she was halfway annoyed and halfway worried. Randall. I stopped dead. Everybody says if something calls you at night, don't answer, don't turn. That sounds like folklore until it uses a voice that belongs to somebody you loved. Then it doesn't feel like folklore at all. It feels like weakness finding your address. I turned, nobody behind me. But across the street, between two of the low buildings, stood the woman in red. Only now she looked older than before. I know how crazy that sounds. 5 seconds earlier, she had seemed slim, almost young from a distance. Now she looked fuller in the face, older in the shoulders, like somebody's church auntie who'd seen too much and wanted you to know it. One of the people on the property looked away the second I made eye contact with her. That bothered me more than seeing her, because that told me I wasn't imagining the fact that something was wrong. I picked up my pace. My phone dropped to 9%. I tried pulling up a rideshare just to get out of there faster, but the map kept hanging. My location bounced around like I was standing in 3 places at once. The problem with panic is it makes you stupid in a very specific way. Instead of staying on the better lit street, I cut toward what looked like a faster path between buildings. It was one of those pedestrian walkways that made sense in daylight. Short connection, clean sidewalk, small patch of grass off to the side. Nothing dramatic. Halfway through, the air changed. It got colder first, then quieter, not silent, worse than silent. The kind of quiet where you can still hear the city somewhere far off, but your own little section feels sealed off from it. I came out into a small common area with 2 benches and a dead little tree in a square of dirt. I didn't remember seeing that from the street. I looked left, then right, trying to reorient myself, and that was when I realized I had no idea which opening I had come through. Every building face looked too similar. Every corner felt slightly shifted. A balcony light came on overhead, and I looked up expecting to see somebody leaning out. Instead, I saw the woman in red standing on the upper landing, one hand on the rail. She said, "You came back." I ran. Not a dramatic movie run, not screaming, just full survival mode. I cut around one building, then another, past parked cars, a trash enclosure, a row of townhouse doors, one porch with children's toys stacked neatly against the wall. It all looked normal, which made it worse. I kept expecting to reach the street again, but every turn gave me another stretch of walkway, another low building, another patch of fenced-off grass. Then I noticed something that made my chest go hollow. I passed the same little plastic tricycle twice. Same cracked front wheel, same sticker on the handlebar. I had looped. I heard somebody behind me walking in heels, slow, even, no hurry. I ducked behind the corner of a townhouse building, trying to control my breathing, and peeked around just enough to see the path. The woman in red walked past the opening like she knew exactly where I was and didn't need to look. That's what broke me. Not her face, not the dress, the confidence. Like she knew the land better than I did, because she belonged to it, more than the buildings did. I stayed hidden until my legs cramped, then edged the opposite direction and spotted an open gate farther off. I don't know if it had been there the whole time or not. I didn't care. I bolted for it and came out on Clara Street hard enough to nearly stumble into the curb. The city noise came back all at once. A car went by. Somebody laughed from a porch farther down. Normal life. I kept walking until I hit a gas station and stood inside under those bright, ugly lights, pretending I was looking at drinks while my hands shook. Next morning, I asked my cousin if anybody around there talked about seeing a woman in red. She didn't even pretend not to know what I meant. She just asked, did she look old or young? That's the question that stayed with me, because I said both. And my cousin nodded like that answered something for her. She told me people around there don't talk about it much out loud, especially not to outsiders. They just say, some places don't like being renamed. Some histories don't like being covered. And if you move through there at the wrong hour and something notices you, it may use a face you'll follow. I haven't cut through there since. I still pass near it sometimes. Daytime mostly. And in daylight it looks exactly like what it is supposed to look like. A real neighborhood, families, newer buildings, a place people live and raise kids. But every now and then, late, if I catch the angle wrong while driving by, I'll see a spot of deep red near one of the interior walkways. Never long enough to swear to it, always long enough to keep driving. Bankhead, Atlanta. I learned the hard way that there's a difference between a block being active and a block being wrong. Active is normal. Music, folks outside, somebody arguing, somebody laughing, somebody waiting on wings, or a fried fish plate too late at night, because that's just how the city moves. Wrong is when everything still looks normal, but one little detail starts repeating itself until you realize it's not life moving around you. It's something working its way closer. This happened to me in Bankhead in Atlanta, maybe a year and a half ago. I had gone with my boy Tink to grab food from one of those late night spots that stays busy because everybody in the area knows they'll still sell until ridiculous hours. Nothing fancy. Bulletproof glass, laminated menu with pictures that don't match the food exactly, too much light coming from inside, a few dudes posted up outside, and that smell of grease, seasoning salt, an old concrete that somehow every hood food spot in America shares. We were supposed to grab food and leave. That was it. But Tink knew everybody, which is the same as saying nothing in the night is ever quick when you're with him. We pulled up around 11:40, ordered, and while we were waiting, he got caught talking to some dude he hadn't seen in forever. Then some girl he knew walked up. Then some older lady asked him about her nephew. Then another car pulled in and he went over there too. So I was mostly by myself, standing near the side of the building under a flickering light, checking my phone and trying not to look irritated. That's when I noticed the white car. It was an old white Crown Vic. Not clean, not classic, just old. Faded paint. Front bumper looked a little loose on one side. Driver's side headlight dimmer than the other one. It rolled past the food spot slow, like the driver was looking for somebody. I didn't think much of it. In places like that, people circle all the time. Waiting on food, waiting on a text, waiting on somebody to come out, seeing who's outside before they decide to stop. The problem was, about 3 minutes later, the same car passed again. Same speed, same dim headlight, same slow roll. I only really clocked it because this time the windows were down enough for me to see there were 3 people inside. Driver, front passenger, 1 person in the back. They all looked forward. Nobody turned their head. Nobody said anything out the window. They just rolled by. I asked Tink, "You know that car?" He barely looked up from his conversation and said, "Probably somebody looking for somebody." That should have been enough, but then it came around a 3rd time. This time, there were only 2 people in it, driver and passenger, no backseat person. That made me stop chewing the inside of my lip and really pay attention, because I know what I saw the first 2 times. I'm not one of those people who half notices stuff and makes the rest up later. There had been somebody sitting in the back, not slouched down, not maybe, sitting upright. Now the back seat was empty. I stepped away from the wall and watched the car disappear down the block. Tink asked me what was wrong. I told him I thought that white car was weird. He laughed and said, "Bro, you in Atlanta. Weird is part of the package." Then he went back to talking. About 10 minutes later, I was still waiting on my food, getting more annoyed than anything else, when the car came back again. And this time, there was only the driver. That's it. No passenger, no back seat, just the driver, slow as ever, head facing forward, hands at 10 and 2. Like this was driver's ed. He didn't speed up, didn't slow down, didn't call out, didn't look over. He just rolled past the food spot like he was counting something. I felt my skin tighten, not because I thought I was in immediate danger, more because something about that sequence made no sense. 3 people, then 2, then 1. And if it kept coming back, what was I supposed to see next? I asked one of the dudes standing by the front door if he knew the white Crown Vic. He looked down the block where it had gone, then looked back at me and said, "Don't stand out here too long tonight." That was not an answer, which made it worse. I went inside to get my food, and the lady at the window was moving slow like they always do when you've been waiting forever. When she handed me my bag, I asked her if that white car came through there a lot. She stared at me for half a second too long. Then she said, "Sometimes folks look for the wrong person and find one." That's all she said. I turned around with my food in my hand and suddenly the whole place felt off. All the same people were there, but the energy had shifted. Conversations were shorter. Folks kept looking down the street, then looking away. A guy near the curb got in his car without even waiting on the rest of his order. Tink finally came over and told me we should go. I asked him why. He said because I said so. That's when I knew he was nervous too. We started heading toward his car, which was parked in a darker section of the lot off to the side. Halfway there, I heard tires crunch lightly over gravel behind us. I turned. The white Crown Vic had pulled into the side alley next to the food spot and stopped. Engine running, headlights on. Only now I could see something I hadn't been able to see when it was moving. There was someone sitting in the back seat again, but they weren't moving, not even a little. I stopped walking. Tink grabbed my elbow and said, "Don't do that." I asked him what the hell was going on. He said low, "Get in the car first." But before we made it another step, the back door of the Crown Vic opened. Not all the way, just enough. Nobody got out. The driver stayed still. The door stayed open. The person in back stayed still. A man by the front of the food spot shouted, "Close that damn door." The driver didn't react. Then the person in the back leaned forward just enough for the dome light to catch part of their face. And my stomach dropped because it was a girl. Young, maybe late teens, early 20s. Hair messy, eyes open way too wide. She looked straight at me and mouthed one word: "Help." I started toward the car before I could think better of it. Tink yanked me back so hard my food bag ripped open and fries hit the pavement. Then the girl in the back seat smiled. Not a relieved smile, not a desperate smile, a huge, wrong smile, like the word had only been bait. The driver slammed the car into reverse so fast the open back door snapped shut and the whole car shot backward out of the alley, tires squealing just once before it straightened and disappeared down the block. Everything outside the food spot went silent for maybe 3 seconds. Then everybody started talking at once. I looked at Tink and said, "What the hell was that?" He didn't answer. One of the older men standing near the door said, "It done picked somebody." I asked what that meant. Nobody wanted to explain it clearly, which usually means a story has been around long enough that people are tired of sounding crazy when they tell it. Eventually, Tink told me what he'd heard growing up. Every now and then, on certain nights, that white car circles late night spots in Bankhead and West Atlanta blocks where folks hang outside after midnight. Always slow, always quiet. People claim the number of riders changes every pass. 3, then 2, then 1. Sometimes 2, then none. Sometimes the same face appears in different seats. Sometimes a woman asks for help. Sometimes a child is in the back looking asleep. Sometimes you see somebody you know. The point, according to the rumor, is not to stop the car. It's to see who gets curious enough to step toward it. I laughed when he told me that. Not because it was funny, because I wanted it to sound stupid. But Tink didn't laugh back. He said his cousin once stepped toward that car outside a liquor store off Hollowell years ago because he thought he saw somebody tied up in the back. People with him said the car rolled off before he reached it. His cousin went home pale and quiet. 3 days later, he disappeared walking back from a MARTA stop. Never found. Could be unrelated. Probably is, if you want the normal answer. But after what I saw that night, I'm done needing the normal answer. The worst part is this. About 2 months later, I was scrolling online and saw somebody in an Atlanta thread joking about that ghost Crown Vic that keeps circling food spots on the west side. Most comments were laughing. A few weren't. One dude said if you ever see somebody in the back seat trying too hard to get your attention, that means the car already chose you before it came around the first time. I haven't gone back to that food spot since. Not because I'm scared of the neighborhood. I'm scared of seeing that car come around once and realizing I've already seen it twice. There are certain parts of Houston that feel bigger at night than they do in the daytime. I'm not talking about size on a map. I mean emotionally. Places where the buildings, the open spaces, the sidewalks, the parked cars, the trees, all of it seems to spread out and hold more dark than it should. That's how Third Ward felt the night my cousin left me outside near CUNY Homes. I had driven down from Dallas for the weekend because he'd been bugging me for months to come through. We weren't super close growing up, but family is family. And sometimes you tell yourself getting out of your routine for a couple days might do you some good. Saturday night, he said we were about to slide through somewhere for just a second. Anytime somebody says that, they're lying. We ended up near CUNY after midnight. He was supposed to hop out, grab something from somebody, then we were going to head toward a kickback he kept talking about. That was the plan. Instead, he got a phone call the second we parked, muttered, "Hold on," and disappeared between two buildings like I was supposed to understand that meant 20 minutes. At first I stayed in the car. Then I started calling him. No answer. Then I got irritated enough to get out and look for him. That was stupid. Not because CUNY itself is some magical death trap. I'm not doing that thing where people act like every housing project is automatically a horror movie. That's not what this was. What got me was the layout at night. Low buildings, walkways, open sections, cars parked in rows, patches of dark between useful light. The kind of place where if you belong there, it all makes perfect sense. If you don't, every direction starts to feel equally wrong after a while. I walked to the corner of one building, then another, expecting to see my cousin talking to somebody or leaning into a car. Nothing. A couple people were outside farther off, but not close enough to ask without sounding like a problem. I called again, straight to voicemail. That's when I heard somebody say my name, soft, from my left. I turned immediately because it sounded exactly like my older brother. Not similar, exactly like him. He was in Dallas. I stared into the dark stretch between two buildings and felt that crawling sensation start up the back of my neck. A second later, the same voice said my name again, still soft. Like whoever it was didn't want to spook me. I didn't move. Then from somewhere farther ahead, I heard my cousin shout, "Over here." That's the kind of thing your body reacts to before your brain can. I started walking toward the sound, but a woman sitting on the hood of a car near the curb said, "That ain't for you." I stopped. She didn't look at me when she said it, just kept staring down the lane like she was talking to herself. I asked if she was speaking to me. She said, "If it call you twice, don't answer it the third time." Then she slid off the hood, got into the car behind her and shut the door. No goodbye, no explanation. I wish I could tell you I left right then. I didn't. Because a minute later, I really did hear my cousin again, closer this time, sounding annoyed now. "Man, come on." And in a place you don't know well, irritation will fool you into trusting things fear would have saved you from. So I went. I followed the voice between buildings, across a patch of broken sidewalk, around a parked SUV, then into a darker section where one of the streetlights was out. I realized too late I hadn't actually seen another person in almost a minute. No porch talk, no phone glow, no movement. Just me walking toward a voice that stayed the same distance away no matter how much ground I covered. That's when I heard it again behind me, my brother's voice, saying my name. But this time it sounded hurt, like he had a split lip or broken jaw. I spun around and there was nobody there. When I faced forward again, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. I was not where I thought I was. I had drifted farther into the property than I meant to, and the path ahead had narrowed between parked cars and building corners in a way that suddenly made every turn feel like a trap. I pulled my phone up for light and saw the battery was at 4%. I called my cousin again. This time he answered. I started cussing before he even spoke. He cut me off and said very fast, "Where you at?" I said I didn't know exactly. He said, "Do not follow nobody calling you." I froze. Then the call dropped, phone dead. I stood there in the dark with my dead screen in my hand and that stupid hollow feeling hit me. The one where the world doesn't change, but your understanding of it does. Then I heard footsteps behind me, not running, walking, slow, even, confident. I moved without thinking and cut between two parked cars, then around the corner of the nearest building, keeping low like I was hiding from somebody human. Part of me still hoped it was human. That would have made more sense. I crouched near a wall and listened. The footsteps passed the opening and kept going. Then my cousin's voice came from the other direction and said, "You good, come on." Wrong, too calm. My real cousin sounded panicked on the phone. This voice sounded like it was trying to remember how he usually talked. I stayed where I was. A few seconds later, another voice, my mother this time, said, "Baby." That almost got me. I'm not ashamed to say that. If you hear your mother sounding scared in the dark, something in you wants to answer no matter how old you are. But there was a shape at the far end of the lane now, just beyond the reach of the nearest light, standing still, not moving like somebody calling out for help. Just standing there like whatever it was knew the voice alone did most of the work. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on it until I bumped into a chain-link fence. That fence saved me, not because it was magical, because on the other side of it was a brighter street, actual traffic, and two men smoking near a bus stop. Normal people, normal light. I climbed that fence ugly and fast, scraped my palm, landed wrong, and almost fell into the sidewalk. One of the men grabbed my arm and said, "You good?" I turned back immediately. The lane behind the fence was empty. No figure, no voice, nothing. My cousin found me 15 minutes later after borrowing somebody else's charger to call around. He swore he had been looking for me the whole time and that he never once called me from inside the property. I believed him because his face was too scared not to. When we got back to his place, his aunt was there, and the second he told her where he'd left me, she smacked him in the chest and asked if he had lost his mind. Then she looked at me and asked the question I wish she hadn't. What voice it used first? Used. Not, what voice did you hear? Used. Like this was already a known thing. She said every few years somebody in that area talks about hearing loved ones call them from the wrong places late at night. Usually when they're alone, tired, upset, or already looking for someone. Sometimes nothing happens beyond the fear. Sometimes people get turned around and end up walking way deeper into places they didn't mean to go. Sometimes they disappear for a few hours and come back not wanting to say where they were. And sometimes, according to her, they never admit they followed the voice at all. That was 3 years ago. I still go to Houston, still love 3rd Ward, but I don't get out of cars in places I don't know just because somebody says hold on. And if I hear my name in the dark where it shouldn't be, I let it belong to the dark. The worst scary stuff doesn't always start scary. Sometimes it starts stupid. That's what happened to me and my boys in South Memphis. We were making a dumb video, that's it. Nothing spiritual, nothing serious. Just late evening boredom, jokes, phones out trying to get clips for social media because one of my friends swore he was about to start taking content seriously if one post ever hit. This was near South Memphis, not far from the newer South City area, where old neighborhood memory and newer redevelopment sit closer together than people who don't know the city realize. We weren't trespassing, weren't breaking into nothing, weren't doing anything dramatic, just hanging around a basketball court in the nearby sidewalk area after dark when most people had already gone in. It was me, my boy Jalen, and my cousin Day. Jalen was the one always trying to be funny on camera. Day didn't care about social media, but liked laughing at other people embarrassing themselves. I was mostly there because I didn't have anything better to do and didn't feel like going home yet. At first it was regular. Jalen doing fake motivational speeches, Day roasting him, me filming, cars passing in the distance, a dog barking somewhere, a train horn way off, normal city night. Then Jalen said he wanted one more clip with the walkway and buildings behind him because the lighting looked cinematic. That should tell you what kind of nonsense mood we were in. So I framed him up with the phone and started recording while he did this fake serious speech about surviving the trenches, even though none of what he was saying made sense. Halfway through, Day stopped laughing. I noticed because Day never stopped laughing at Jalen. I lowered the phone and asked what was wrong. He pointed behind Jalen and said, "Who that little boy?" We all looked. At the far end of the walkway, past where the light got weak, a little boy was standing there. Couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. Plain shirt, dark shorts, hands at his sides. Just standing there watching us. Now, in any real neighborhood, a kid being outside is not automatically creepy. Kids be outside. That wasn't the issue. The issue was how still he was. No shifting, no fidgeting, no curiosity. Just standing there like he had been placed. Jalen waved and said, "You good, little man?" No response. Day called out, "Where your people at?" Nothing. The kid just stayed there. Then a car turned at the far corner and its headlights washed over the walkway for maybe 2 seconds. When the light passed, the kid was gone. Jalen said, "Okay, nah." I laughed because I wanted to kill the weird feeling fast. I told them maybe the boy had stepped behind the post or cut around to another side. Day said, "Without moving?" Nobody answered that. We left the court and went to a nearby gas station, got drinks, and sat in the car watching the first videos back because now the energy was off and none of us really wanted to stand around there anymore. That's when it got bad. In the clip where Jalen was talking and Day first went quiet, the little boy was already in the background, not just at the far end of the walkway, closer than we remembered, standing near the bench behind us. We paused the video and stared. There was no way. If he had been that close, we would have noticed him immediately. But there he was on screen, clear enough to make out, standing in the background with his head slightly lowered, and Jalen kept saying, "That's fake, that's fake." Like saying it enough could make the phone agree. Then I scrubbed forward, and in the next few seconds of the clip, while Jalen was still talking, the little boy was suddenly farther away again, not walking away, just farther, like the video had skipped pieces of him moving. They got real quiet. That's always a bad sign with funny people. We watched the rest of the clips. He was in 2 more of them, sometimes near the court, sometimes by the walkway, always in the background, never noticed while we were recording. In the last video, the one we filmed right before leaving, he was standing directly behind where Jalen had been joking to camera, close enough that if he'd taken 1 step forward, he would have been in arm's reach. None of us had seen that, none. Jalen wanted to delete everything immediately. Dave said no, because he wanted proof we weren't tripping. I should have listened to the part of me that said proof is overrated when something doesn't want to be recorded. Instead, we kept watching. By the time I got home, I had played the clip so many times that I started noticing stuff I wished I hadn't. The little boy never blinked in any frame where his face was visible. His shadow didn't line up with the lights, and in one freeze frame, his mouth was open just a little too wide, like he had been smiling during a moment the camera didn't fully catch. I barely slept. Next morning, Jalen texted us saying somebody had been outside his window around 2 a.m., not knocking, not throwing rocks, just standing there. He said he never got a good look because he was too scared to move the curtain again once he realized the person outside wasn't moving. Day said stop playing. Jalen sent a picture. It was blurry and dark, but there was definitely a short shape standing near the edge of his yard. Day stopped joking after that. Over the next week, things got worse in little ways that were easy to dismiss one by one and impossible to dismiss together. Jalen said he kept hearing a basketball bounce outside his apartment at night, even though nobody was there when he checked. Day swore he saw a child-sized reflection in the glass door at work after closing. I started waking up at 3-something every night feeling like somebody had just stepped away from my bed. Then Jalen made the worst mistake of all. He posted a shorter version of the clip, not because he thought it was haunted, because he thought people would laugh at the weird background figure and help us figure out what it was. The comments came in fast. Most people joked. A couple people from Memphis didn't. One girl commented asking exactly what part of South Memphis that was and whether it was near where old buildings used to stand before the redevelopment. Another guy said his aunt used to warn him not to acknowledge children standing alone after dark in that area if they weren't acting like real children. Jalen deleted the post later that night. Too late. He called us around midnight crying harder than I have ever heard another grown man cry. He said the little boy was in his apartment, not running around, not attacking him, just standing at the end of his hallway. I drove over there with Day, because whether it was real or not, you don't leave your friend alone when he sounds like that. By the time we got there, Jalen was outside barefoot in the parking lot with tears on his face and his keys in his hand. He refused to go back in alone, so we all went. Every light in the apartment was on, nothing there. But on the TV screen, black because it was off, we could see our reflection and a small figure behind us in the hallway. We spun around, empty. Jalen threw up in the kitchen sink. We stayed with him the rest of the night. None of us ever went back to that court after dark. The creepiest part is that a month later, when I thought the whole thing had finally faded, I opened my phone gallery and found one still frame saved that I did not remember capturing. It wasn't from a normal pause in the video. It was a zoomed-in image of the little boy's face. And this time, he was smiling wide enough to show teeth. There's a certain kind of driving around you do when you don't really have anywhere to be. Not cruising for girls, not going anywhere important, just moving through the city because sitting still feels worse. That's what me and 2 friends were doing in Birmingham one fall night when we ended up in Rosedale. One of my boys, Marcus, was from around there originally and liked taking us through older parts of the city, pointing out how things used to be before streets changed, before people moved, before half the houses got fixed up and the other half just stayed standing out of pure stubbornness. Rosedale has a lot of that. Older homes, shotgun houses, duplexes, porches, blocks that feel like they've seen too much to explain themselves. It was me, Marcus, and my cousin P. Marcus was driving slow, talking about which streets his uncle used to live on, and P was half listening, half scrolling on his phone. I was in the back seat, looking out the window at the houses, because Birmingham at night has this way of making old neighborhoods feel like they're holding their breath. That's when I saw the child in the window, small face, second house on the left, upper part of the front window, just watching the street. I leaned forward and told Marcus to slow up. He asked what I saw. I said there was a little boy in that house just staring out. Marcus glanced over and shrugged. Okay. And that should have been it. Except about a block and a half later, I saw the same face again. Different house, different side of the street, same stillness. I sat up straighter. Maybe it wasn't the exact same kid, but I knew what made me uneasy. He wasn't moving like a real kid looking out a window. No waving, no climbing the sill, no trying to see the car better. Just face visible in the dark behind the glass, like he had been there a long time before we passed. I told Marcus to stop the car. He did, mostly because my tone changed. P looked up from his phone and asked what was going on. I pointed back toward the house. By the time they turned to look, the window was empty. Marcus laughed at me and said I was creeping myself out. I almost let it go. Then we turned down another street, and there he was again. Third house, new block, different window, same face. This time Marcus saw him too. The laugh disappeared off his face immediately. P twisted around so fast he dropped his phone between the seats and started cussing. We all stared through the windshield as Marcus slowed to almost a crawl. The child was maybe 8 or 9, dark shirt, narrow face, one hand resting against the side of the window frame. No change in expression, no reaction to our headlights. Then the porch light of that house clicked on. The window went black, not empty, black, like whatever had been standing there was no longer being lit from behind. Marcus hit the gas. Nobody said anything for a full minute. Then P said, "Turn around." Marcus said no. P said if all three of us saw the same thing, we needed to know if somebody was messing with us. That is the kind of logic fear creates, when it doesn't know what else to do. So Marcus turned around. We went back to the first house. No child. Second house. No child. Third house. No child. We should have kept driving. Instead, Marcus parked under a streetlight and said maybe we had seen reflections, or maybe neighborhood kids were playing around house to house. I asked how a kid gets ahead of a moving car 3 times without ever being seen outside. Nobody answered. Then Pete pointed across the street, a 4th window, house we had not passed the first time, and there he was again. Only now he wasn't alone. There was another face lower down beside him, too low to be another child standing, more like somebody crouched. The lower face vanished first. The child stayed. Marcus started the car immediately, but before he pulled off, the child lifted one hand and tapped the window glass once. We didn't hear it from across the street. We felt it. That's the only way I can explain it. Like the tap happened somewhere inside the car with us, even though he was in the house. Marcus drove all the way out to a brighter road before stopping. We sat there breathing hard, like we'd narrowly avoided something, even though technically nothing had happened yet. Marcus finally admitted his grandmother used to tell them not to count children in windows at night in certain Birmingham neighborhoods because some of them ain't waiting on family. I asked him why he'd never mentioned that before. He said because it sounded like old people nonsense until right then. We tried to laugh it off after that, but the night was done. Nobody wanted food. Nobody wanted to keep riding around. Marcus dropped me off first, then P. At around 2:30 that morning, Marcus called me. No hello. He just said, it followed me home. I sat up immediately. He said when he got back to his place and parked, he looked up at the 2nd floor window of the vacant duplex next door and saw the same child standing there. Same face, same stillness. He stayed in the car for 10 minutes because he didn't want to walk from the driveway to his front door with that window watching him. Next day, All three of us met up in daylight and drove back to Rosedale. Because like idiots, we wanted the neighborhood to make sense again. It almost did. The houses looked normal, old but normal. Porches, chain link fences, yards, side streets. But when we got to the third house where Marcus had definitely seen the child, the front room window had been painted black from the inside, not curtained, painted. And on the porch, an elderly woman sat in a chair fanning herself. Marcus asked if children lived there. She looked at us for a long time before saying, "Not no more." Then she asked which windows we'd seen him in. That question landed like a brick. We told her. She nodded slowly, like she had hoped we'd say different ones. She said years ago there was a child in the area who used to go house to house instead of going home. Nobody ever had the full story on him. Some said neglect, some said abuse. Some said he was always being sent away from one porch to another. Then one winter he disappeared for real, and after that people started saying they see him in windows on blocks he had no business being on, always looking in, never looking out. I asked what that meant. She said, "Means he ain't watching the street. He watching for somewhere to be let into." We left right after that. I wish I could say that was the end. It wasn't. For the next 2 weeks, every time I passed the house at night, I checked the windows before I meant to. Couldn't help it. Grocery store parking lots, side streets, freeway exits near neighborhoods. My eyes kept searching dark glass. Then one night, sitting at a red light in my own part of town, I looked up at a second-floor apartment window across the intersection and felt my entire body go cold, because there he was, same face, same stillness, different city block, different kind of building, still watching. That's when I understood what scared Marcus so badly. It wasn't that we had seen something impossible in Rosedale. It was the feeling that once you noticed him, windows stopped being windows. They became chances for him to notice you back.
How do y'all feel about those stories? If you made it this far, I want to thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Get in those comments and tell me what story you liked. Also, don't be afraid to let me know some new story ideas. Y'all have a good day.